been looking at the book of Acts of the Apostles, and I've got to Acts 15. And in Acts 15, we find that the apostles are dealing with a very difficult question. Paul and Barnabas are sent up to Jerusalem with some other believers, and they're trying to sort out some of the difficulties that they've encountered. Now, the difficulties around this is that the Judean believers who've come down, some of those who've come down to Antioch, are saying that people need to be circumcised. In other words, they have to follow Jewish customs. And this is causing quite a lot of difficulty and disagreement. So Paul and Barnabas go up to Jerusalem and try and talk through this issue. And one of the exciting things really is that Peter, who comes very much from a Jewish background, but has had a real revelation of God's love for the Gentiles, he stands up and he realizes that God has got a purpose for the Gentiles, for the non-Jews. And James also stands up, and James quotes the passage from Amos chapter 9. And it says this: "And after this I will return and rebuild David's fallen tent. Its ruins I will rebuild, and I will restore it, that the remnant of men may seek the Lord, and all the Gentiles who bear my name, says the Lord, who does these things that have been known for ages." What it's talking about is how worship is going to get restored, and it's a worship that's not just focused on one people only, but it's a worship that's going to be for all peoples. And it's part of God's plan. This is part of what God's doing. He's restoring worship, not just for one group of people, but for all people everywhere. Because as Jesus really clearly said in John chapter 4 to the woman at the well in Samaria, it's not just that worship is going to happen on one mountain or another mountain, just not in one place or another place, but actually there's going to be worship in spirit and truth. There's going to be true worship restored of the living God. It's the all creation, all mankind, everybody was made for the purpose of worship. And so this is very important, because as they wrestle through with this issue about Jewish customs and laws and how do these things apply, and what things are things which they need to focus on, the actual moral content behind them, what sort of things are they're trying to wrestle with, which means that they make good, important and righteous decisions, and yet they don't bind people into situations and bind people into things which are only there as a signpost, and they almost trap the Gentiles into believing that they're not worthy, they don't fit in. As they do that process, as they go through that process, as they wrestle with those very difficult questions, then actually this is an important thing for the church. The early church needs to find a way through so that the gospel is not chained, is not limited. As Paul says in the New Testament, my gospel is not chained. It's not limited, it's not constrained. Whatever the circumstances, the gospel is free to spread, it's free to go to all peoples everywhere. And this worship that's restored to the whole earth, that's God's great plan, that's God's great vision. That's the story of Acts unfolding. And so as Paul and Barnabas and these others go up to Jerusalem, wrestle with this issue, as the church thinks it through, talks it through, and tries to define what's important for all people everywhere, then that brings a fresh release of freedom for the gospel. It brings a fresh liberty for the gospel to go unchained, unfettered to all people across the Mediterranean world. And so its effect and its power and influence can touch many people, both Jew and Gentile.